Attention, you're listening to The Todd Huff Show, America's home for conservative, not bitter talk and education. Be advised, the content of this program has been documented to prevent and even cure liberalism, and listening may cause you to lean to the right. And now, coming to you from the Full Suite Wealth Studios, here's your conservative but not bitter host, Todd Huff.
That is right, my friends. You are listening to America's home for conservative, not bitter talk. I'm your host, the one, the only, the ever so beloved, the benevolent dictator behind the microphone here at the Todd Huff Show. By the way, I should remind you, as I had to remind myself here just a little bit ago, that, what is today? The 7th. So on the 10th, which will be Sunday, so we won't be here with you on Sunday, but that is the 10th anniversary of this program, which is, I have so many thoughts about that. I'll probably talk about that tomorrow. It'll be, I guess, in a manner of speaking, our 10th anniversary program, but it is crazy to think about how fast time goes, the things that we're talking about today that I didn't even dream were possible. I shouldn't say that. I didn't think they would happen all those many years ago. But 10 years is a long time doing this. I'm not saying we're done or anything. I'm just saying that it's hard to believe it's been 10 years. And I appreciate those who have been there with us from day number one. I appreciate those who have joined us at any point, even if today is the first day you're listening. I welcome and appreciate having you as a listener of this program. All right, today, what I want to talk about today. Well, if you've listened to this program for some time, you know that the current lieutenant governor for the state of Indiana, his name is Micah Beckwith. You may have known Micah previously. He ran for Congress in Indiana's, 6th district. That's where Victoria Spartz is the current representative. He's run for that. He was led the Hoosier Leadership Series. I was introduced to Micah a relatively long time ago, somewhere along this 10-year journey. And if you listen to this program for a long time, you know that Micah would be Lieutenant Governor Beckwith now, which is, I'm sorry, I can't do that. But I don't mean that disrespectfully. It's just interesting having known him before this. But this is you wouldn't know that he filled in on this program. And so he's in the news. I saw this, a couple of days ago, but it keeps getting more attention. And so I want to talk about it today. He was at a town hall meeting of some sort. I'm not entirely sure what the meeting was, but he was addressing a very raucous crowd, a crowd that wanted to say, basically question what is happening regarding the administration, the presidential administration, the White House, and ICE and detentions and that sort of stuff, deportations. And Micah made a comment that is actually right, but that the folks on social media still cannot grasp. Maybe Micah should have said it a little bit differently, with all due respect to my friend and the lieutenant governor, but he's correct. And I'm going to go through this today when it comes to this issue of due process. And I'm going to start by playing that soundbite. So that's where we're going to go. And there's other stuff in the news as well, which you can always check out again if you're new to the program. Go to the stack of stuff on our website, and you'll see the things that I'm prepared to talk about or that I have spoken about here on the program, and you can read or watch the clips or whatever it is, and that's at toddhuffshow.com. So we'll get to that here in just a moment. Friends, let me remind you that it's important, as you well know, it's important to note that we all age. We all age. And as we age, there are things that, you don't maybe think about when you're younger that you think about when you're older, or as you're aging, becoming more seasoned. Not, maybe we don't want to say older, but just more seasoned. And it is important to start taking care. It's always important to take care of ourselves, but it seems to become more important or more noticeable when we don't, the older that we get. And that's just not, externally, maybe something, the way that we look, or maybe the joints or whatever, which of course are internal too. But you got to think about things like your heart, especially if you come from a family that has high cholesterol problems or heart issues. That's why you can take Solti. It's why I take Solti. Solti.com is where you can get the product or learn more about it. SOLTEA. Promo code Todd, by the way, will get you 50% off that first order and free shipping to boot. The only thing you have to lose, my friends, are those high cholesterol numbers. Solti.com, SOLTEA, promo code Todd. All right. So that being said, let's set the stage here. Let me back up just a bit here. Micah Beckwith, who's the lieutenant governor for Indiana, who has a bunch of haters out there, I can tell you, is a good guy. Micah Beckwith is a good guy. Micah Beckwith is a sharp guy. Micah Beckwith went to a school in Michigan called Hillsdale College. Hillsdale College is a fantastic place. Of all the places, my friends, of all the places where you could go as a college student in this country, I would say if you want to list the schools that are still interested in teaching truth and adhering to some form of morality, Hillsdale is in that group of people, of schools, colleges, universities that are trying to do it right. They are teaching all their kids about the students, I should say, about the Constitution. So Micah, by virtue of simply going there, has studied the Constitution significantly more than any other person, other than people who have gone to law school or who are constitutional scholars. But the average person has not read or is more familiar with the Constitution. Again, there's exceptions, but it's not through the normal course of your academic pursuits. You would have had to take this upon your shoulders personally to study, to read, and to get familiar with the Constitution. So, Micah Beckwith is grilled about this. He is at, again, I don't know the meeting exactly. I've just seen clips of this, but he's in front of a bunch of angry voters. Angry voters. And what are they angry about? They're angry about a lot. They hate Trump. They hate the governor, Mike Braun. By the way, Micah's pathway to being the lieutenant governor is one that is not common. In fact, there's some tension between Braun and Beckwith because of the way that Micah became the lieutenant governor. Micah never ran for, he actually ran for lieutenant governor, which basically just meant he made it known that he wanted to be lieutenant governor. You don't run for the seat. Typically what happens is someone becomes the nominee to be the Republican or the Democrat for that matter, gubernatorial governor candidate, and then they choose their running mate. Well, that's what it appears to be the case, but there's actually a technical step in the process, and that process happens at the convention where the delegates actually vote to approve of the running mate for the person to be lieutenant governor on the ticket. Well, Micah was not Braun's choice. Braun had his own choice. Micah had been campaigning and said from the very beginning this is what he was going to do. Now, I will be honest with you. I tell you on this program, very transparent here, I told you, I say that this is, I understand if you would think that we're rarely wrong on this program. I understand if you think that we get it right all the time. And there's good reason to believe that. But I'm kidding, just kind of, but I'm kidding. I was wrong on this. I thought Micah, I never told him this, not because we just didn't have the discussion. But I wasn't going to tell, I was just going to ask about it. What makes, why are you doing this? Not in some, just out of curiosity. Do you really think this is going to work, Micah? I didn't think it would work. It did work. It did work. He won the support of enough of the delegates to where he became the lieutenant governor. And kudos to him for doing this. I did not think that he would be able to pull this off. And he did. Now, he's been a guest host on this program. I don't know if I finished that thought as I was talking about him and my just having known him. But he filled in as a guest host on this program, I don't know, a handful of times over the course of the past probably 6, 7, I don't know, several years. So anyway, he's lieutenant governor. He's out there. You know the routine. You know the drill. There's a lot of people who are upset. There are reports that ICE is looking at creating another, what do they call the one? Alligator, Alcatraz, or whatever down in Florida, a detention center for illegal aliens. They're talking now, there's plans now of building one here in Indiana. This, of course, is another thing to get people upset about. You may have seen Zoran Mamdani, the mayoral candidate for the city of New York, who's out there saying that ICE is abducting people, right? You hear people talking about the secret police. They call these detention facilities concentration camps, on and on. That's the crowd. I just want you to know, that's the crowd. So when I play this and you hear it's only 30 seconds. And in fact, it's been edited. I didn't edit it. It's edited for time. I've pulled this off of TikTok, believe it or not. It's called, the TikTok page is Fight for Progress. It's some leftist organization, leftist outfit. That's what my grandpa used to say, this outfit, but leftist group, right? And so they've pulled this clip and they've edited it. I don't mean for deceptive purposes. It's just, it connects two parts of this that has something in the middle that, just it makes it longer and people have the attention span of a fly, especially if they're a leftist. But so they've put this together, and I want to play this in a moment. And you're going to hear a raucous crowd. They're going to be upset, and they're going to be going after Micah. They think they've got him dead to rights. They think that they are correct. They think that they understand due process, which is what Micah is talking about. And we're going to go through this today. We're going to go through this today. Now, Micah is exactly right here. If you read the comments here, which at this moment in time as I'm speaking with you, there's 985 comments. I'll just read it for you a couple to give you an idea of the flavor. You might imagine what some of these comments are. How are you going to know if they're illegal or not without due process? That's what Link One Den says. Let's see, here's the next comment. This is why lawyers should be primarily selected as legislative nominees. First of all, this is Cam Casto. What is Cam talking about? The lawyers, with all due respect, there's good lawyers. Don't misunderstand me. I've got good lawyers out there that listen. I have an attorney that I hear from, a retired attorney, who emails this program every once in a while, and I always love hearing from him. But I'm not saying that there's no good lawyers, but making an entire legislative body out of pure attorneys is the ruination of this great nation. One of the reasons for it, anyway. Again, I'm not saying the good ones. I'm saying the ones who look for ways to manipulate and to create loopholes and to create a system that just functions in a way that normal, average people wouldn't create. But anyway, he continues here. And also, Mike is not a legislator. He's not a nominee. He's a lieutenant governor. Cam, you have no idea, dude, what you're talking about. I'm tired of car salesmen, he writes, football coaches, and reality show hosts invading politics. Why? Trump was a reality show host, and the truth is, America is on a much better trajectory than it was when the professional politicians were running the show. Anyway, there's also some comments about Micah looking like Seth MacFarlane, which I get interests, makes me laugh as well. But it says, one person says, when did Seth MacFarlane get elected to office? I can see that similarity, by the way. I never thought about that before, but I can see it. Anyway, so Micah's in front of the crowd. He's got an angry crowd who's already come in with their mind made up that Micah is on the side of the people that want to send people to concentration camps. They want to strip constitutional rights from people, due process rights. They want to treat them like animals. They want to separate families. They want to put people in cages, right? This is the mindset. Trump's a dictator by extension. Micah is a Republican Trump supporter. He has to be a dictator supporting fascists, right? This is the crowd. So you're not going to win with this crowd. You're not going to win with this crowd. In fact, one of the things that we talk about from time to time on this program, and it's one of the things I want to develop in the inner circle, is how to be more effective as a conservative communicator. And one of the first things that you need to realize is the person that I'm speaking with having this conversation or this dialogue in good faith? Because if they're not, if they're angry, if they're bitter, if they just want to prove that I'm evil or whatever, that's their intention, then you're wasting your time and breath. You're wasting your time and breath. They're not ready to hear the truth, then why do it? There's biblical verses that even remind me about stuff like this. Don't lay pearls before swine, for example. I know that sounds very, what do I want to say? That lights the fuse of a lot of people. But you just, if someone is just wanting to be angry, mad, upset, justified, no interest in truth, no interest in dialogue, no interest in even understanding where you're coming from, what your position is, then just, there's not a whole lot you can do. Now, Mike is in a bit of a different situation here. He's a public official. He's got to deal with these people when these things come up, and that's what's happening here. So all that being said, Micah standing in front of these madmen, and this is how it goes down.
So due process is in this situation is: are you here legally?
That isn't.
That is due process. Yes, it is.
Due process is getting arrested and charged with a crime and seeing a judge, and these people are not seeing a judge. That's not true.
They don't have a right to see a judge.
Why?
They came here illegally.
If you are on American soil, your status does not matter. You have a legal right in this country for due process.
So that was, of course, someone in the audience there. Now, I want to go through this. I want to talk about this.
Is in this set.
I don't know why that decided to queue back up here, but the truth is, now Micah said they don't have a right to see a judge. They don't have a right to see. They have a right to see an immigration judge. Micah is saying here, this is not part of the criminal proceedings. They don't have a right to see a trial judge in their criminal proceedings because, first of all, they're not charged criminally. This is a civil violation. It's still, by the way, illegal. Just like it's illegal to go 90 miles an hour in a 70-mile-an-hour zone, it doesn't mean you're going to go to prison for that. You can if it's, just if you're drinking and driving, if you're being incredibly dangerous, there are points that it becomes criminal. But simple speeding is not a criminal violation. It is a civil infraction. But there still are consequences for this. You may have to pay for a fine for a speeding ticket, right? You may, I don't know, there was a time, I don't know how this works today, but you may have to go to defensive driving, some sort of driving course or something like that to prove that you're not just some maniac out there or whatever. That used to be the case, at least at some point. But there could be ramifications, consequences for that. There are consequences if you're here illegally, and they do not involve seeing a trial judge. They involve seeing an immigration court, a judge at an immigration court. So maybe Micah misspoke, but he's speaking from different context. Or from the correct context, as long as it's provided and explained. The other thing is, the person speaking is right if the person is charged criminally. If you're here and you are an illegal alien, no one is claiming that if you're charged with murder or rape or assault, No one is claiming that you don't have criminal due process rights. That's not what anyone is claiming. If you are arrested for assault, then you are given due process. No one is trying to take that away. If they are, they're incorrect. They're misunderstanding. Now, if they say we're not going to charge you criminally, you're just not going to be here, we're going to deport you because you're an illegal alien, then they can go back to the through the immigration system. But no one is talking about taking away due process rights for someone charged with the crime. And there's reasons for this sort of stuff. I'll get to those in due course. But Micah is correct here. And I want to go through this. You can Google, you can go to ChatGPT AI, and you'll find that Micah is technically correct. Again, you have a right to see a judge, but an immigration judge, not a trial judge. So, friends, I want to tell you real quickly before I continue diving into this today, remind you that we have launched Freedom Marketplace. Freedom Marketplace is where you can find businesses that are pushing in the same direction that you are. They love America as founded. They believe in the founding principles. These are people who believe in free markets. They believe in free speech. They're not supporting leftist lunatic candidates or leftist lunatic causes. These are folks that have signed a pledge, in fact, saying that they will not do that. Or, if they do, they'll be removed from the directory. It's free for you to use. freedommarketplace.net. It's absolutely free for you to use as a consumer. You can check out these businesses, and I encourage you to support businesses like those listed at Freedom Marketplace and those that you hear on this program. Because, my friends, lots of reasons they support this. This is one of the reasons why it's free for you to listen and all that. That's great. But also, these are people, we're fighting a battle here in this country. And one of the ways that we've been taken advantage of is that there are these leftist mega corporations who are taking their profits from conservative consumers and promoting leftist candidates and causes. You will not have that problem with businesses on Freedom Marketplace. freedommarketplace.net is where you go, and it's absolutely free. All right, so let me cue this up for when we get back. When we get back, I've got to take a break here in a moment. I'm going to talk about this. I'm going to talk about the difference between due process. There are different types of due process. Due process for criminal allegations and for, being here in this country illegally. So, timeout is in order, my friends. Sit tight. You're listening to Conservative Not Bitter Talk. I'm your host, Todd Huff, back in mere moments. Welcome back, my friends. Talking here about due process. My friend, the lieutenant governor here in Indiana, was grilled for this recently at a town hall type of an event, at a public event where he was faced by people, again, in the crowd who thinks that, that Republicans and MAGA supporters are Nazis, that detention centers for illegal aliens are concentration camps, all that sort of stuff, that it's racist to deport people who are here illegally. That's the crowd. That's why they were upset. Micah was correct that there is a difference in due process. So there's different types of due process, right? There is due process for criminal charges and due process for civil violations. Specifically, we're talking about the civil violation of illegal entry in this nation. So, if you are charged criminally, you are charged as a crime with a crime, there are rights that are afforded to you that are explicitly mentioned in the Constitution. The 5th Amendment, the 6th Amendment, the 14th Amendment. Some of those would include things like this. You have a right to a public trial. You have a right to an attorney, and one will be provided for you even if you can't afford one. You have the right to confront, to face those who have made the allegations and the accusations against you. You have the right to not testify against yourself, to plead the 5th. That's avoiding the possibility of self-incrimination. You have the protections against double jeopardy, and that's not as Michael Scott might tell you, a reason to answer with a question. That is, double jeopardy is when you're charged twice for the same crime. When the state says we didn't get the result that we wanted in that trial, let's charge the person again. You are presumed to be innocent. The level of proof must rise beyond a reasonable doubt. I've shared with you stories from when I was on a jury back in 2018. It was terrible. It was a criminal trial. We found the defendant guilty of conspiracy to commit murder of a 5-year-old. It was terrible. The 5-year-old boy died. But proof beyond a reasonable doubt means, in general terms, that you're 90-some% certain that there's no other explanation that makes more sense than the allegations made by the state. That basically is what that means. So why do we have due process? You see, this is fascinating because it's like this part of the discussion is missed altogether. The reason there's due process is because throughout the course of history, and based and predicated upon human nature, the founders realized that that governments were run by people who in many cases were power hungry, and people who were willing to do whatever they had to do to silence and shut up or to, take advantage of, to get even with people who they didn't like. And so they would do whatever they could to go after these people and to make their lives miserable, even up to and including throwing them in jail or even worse. And so since liberty is a gift of God, which the founders articulated, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights, including life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Liberty is in there. Liberty means that I am my own individual. I'm free. And so if you are facing consequences for an action, a criminal action that would lead to you being losing those liberties and freedoms, then the founders said all the responsibility to prove all that stuff lies with the state. And the person should have all additional protections because we're about to take away their freedoms or potentially even their life. So if that's the case, then this is a serious thing. The government has to prove it. It has to be transparent. They have to be able to hear the evidence presented against them. They must be able to present a defense. They must be given an attorney. It's the only place in the Constitution that I can see where something must be provided to someone else. Typically I say a right is something that you can't force someone else to do for you. That's why the right to health care is kind of it's a good thing. I'm not saying that we shouldn't strive to give everyone access to health care and all that sort of stuff. That's not what I'm saying. There are plenty of good things that we can strive to do as a society that are not rights, but we don't have a right to health care because that requires someone else to do something for us on our behalf. Are you going to force people into labor and to doing something? It doesn't jibe with the concept of a right. This is the only right in the Constitution where you say this is where someone's going to do it for you. And you can pay for it. If you can't, the government will pay for it. There will be a public defender, an attorney that will represent you to try to navigate the complexities and the details of criminal charges and help you present a defense of yourself. That's the concept. It's public. There's no hidden stuff. You're presumed innocent. That you have to be proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. That is if you're charged criminally. Most people aren't facing criminal charges. Now people may deal with civil violations, things where you have to pay a fine or some such thing, but that is different from criminal. Now, the left will say, the left is known for saying this, being in this country illegally is not a crime. That's not correct. It is not a criminal violation. It can be. If you come back, then it can be. If you do commit other crimes while you're here, it can be. But it's not a criminal violation. So they want to say it's not a crime, but there are different types of crimes. As I've laid out before, it's not against the law, they'll say. It's not against the law to be in this country illegally. Of course it is. There's literally laws on the books that say that you can't. And if you are here illegally, you shall be deported. That's basically it, unless there's some exemption, unless there's some claim and some granting of asylum or something like that. So, illegal immigration is a civil charge. So, criminal due process, this is the point, applies if you are charged with a felony or something that a crime that would result potentially in your misdemeanor, even where you would be jailed and lose your freedom. And there's reasons that I just articulated why that's the case. Now, there is due process for civil violations, specifically due process for deportation and immigration removal. What are those? Oh, now we're getting into the meat of this, because I just listed all the other things. All the other things, you heard some of those examples. Due process and criminal charges. Due process for a civil charge, specifically deportation and specifically beyond that, immigration removal. The rights are limited under the Fifth Amendment. So you don't get the full range of criminal rights. Here are the rights that you have, some of the key rights anyway, if you are charged with a civil violation of being in this country illegally, and the consequence being deportation, not the loss of your liberty, right? It's different. You're not taking away someone's liberty. You're simply saying this person is not allowed to be here, and so we're going to take them and not let them be here. We're going to deport them. So some of the key rights would be the right to the notice of the charges. So they must be informed, hey, you're not here legally, and so that's the charges of illegal entry into this country have been, that's what you're facing, which again is something that says you're not, you've broken the law. You have a right to a hearing, not before a criminal court judge, a trial judge, but an immigration judge. You have the right to present evidence, the right to provide testimony. You have the right to legal representation, but it's not something that the government would pay for. Again, why? It's because it is not criminal. When you're looking at taking away someone's liberty, it changes. The stakes are higher. So, since deportation is considered a civil matter, not punishment for a crime, fewer protections apply here, even though the consequences, being deported, maybe going to a place that, there poses other risks. You might have family members that are here that you're separated from, can be serious. So, there you go. I got to take a break here in a moment, my friends. But think about this really quickly. Our investments are like seeds that we plant. They grow, they multiply, but are they bearing the kind of fruit that we want? At 48 Financial, they believe our money should reflect our values. They specialize in wealth management and biblically responsible investing, screening out companies that do not align with our faith. It's all part of their purpose-centered financial planning, I should say. Their pledge to you, though, helping you live a life of meaning and purpose. You can get an assessment of whether or not your current investments align with your values. All you have to do is go to 48financial.com/Todd. I took this assessment. It's not hard. You can do it rather quickly. Check it out, 48financial.com/Todd. I have to take a quick break, my friends. Back in just a minute. Welcome back, my friends. Talking here about due process, the difference between due process for criminal charges, the difference between due process for a civil charge that could lead to deportation. As I mentioned off the top, Micah Beckwith, Lieutenant Governor here, was addressing a crowd who thought he was wrong. They think that they're right, that he's wrong. They start yelling at him. Micah says you don't have a right to see a judge. Micah was saying you don't have a right to see a judge in the criminal court process. You do have a right to see an immigration judge, but this has been conflated and confused. There are certain people that want the confusion that don't include Micah. Micah's actually out there saying the correct thing. There's a different type of due process, and no one is having that taken away. No one's wanting that taken away. In fact, why would we be building detention centers if we wanted to take away due process? The reason that there's detention centers for these folks who are here illegally is because they have to have a place where they are housed. They could be released on bail of their own recognizance if the court deems or the judge deems necessary or appropriate. The problem is that if you've been here illegally, of course, I would think in the vast majority of cases that you would be viewed as a flight risk. The whole point is you've come here, you've tried to fly below the radar, and you've been running in some capacity from the law the entire time you've been here. It's one of the interesting things about illegal immigration. You're constantly breaking the law. It's not like you committed an act one time and then it's over and you can't go back and change it. You could actually change it at any moment by leaving the country that you were not allowed to be in legally. So, I want to tell you a quick story, real quick story. I had to go to the license branch. I needed to get my, what do they call it, the real ID. In fact, I couldn't get it. I may have shared that on here. I had to have, it's a long discussion here. I won't go into the details, but I was there waiting at the BMV, Bureau of Motor Vehicles, and I looked up on the wall. And of course, they have pictures of Mike Braun, the governor of Indiana, and Micah Beckwith. And just having known Mike, I took a picture of his picture on the wall, and I said something along the lines of, I don't know what to think about this. Just teasing Mike. I think Mike is great. There's a lot of things I like about Micah Beckwith. I consider him a friend. I consider he and I to be aligned on, virtually everything. But I still want to tease and have fun with the guy. But it was just interesting to see his picture up there. Anyway, but there is a difference between criminal, Mike is right here, there's a difference between criminal due process and civil due process for the reasons that I have explained. And of course, there's much more, but this is a program that's got to fit within the confines of the format. And so I can't go into every single thing, but Micah is right. So these claims, though, that due process has been violated for people who are here illegally is just simply false. It is 100% false. I don't know what else to say about this. There actually is a lot more to get to. Let me get to what I can. Before I do that, though, friends, maybe you've reached that point, that stage where managing your money feels like juggling more than just numbers. There's tax planning, there's estate work, there's investment choices, a whole lot more. That's when family office services can really make a difference. Full Suite Wealth brings all those pieces together into one cohesive strategy. Their family office services gives you access to a coordinated team with advanced options strategies, private equity, private credit, legal expertise, all under one roof. It's about simplifying your financial life, planning for your future, making sure your legacy stays strong for generations to come. If you are ready for that next level of support, visit FullSuiteWealth.com. Again, that's FullSuiteWealth.com. Build your legacy, secure your future. So, really quickly, I just have a minute or so left. What happens when ICE detains somebody? Let's just go through this so that we understand. This is the process. The process due the person who's being charged with this, in this case, not criminally, but with the civil violation of being in this country without being here illegally. They would conduct some sort of a raid or whatever they're doing. They target individuals who are suspected of being here unlawfully, of violating immigration laws. They then arrest those people, right? These are not secret police. They're not taking people to concentration camps, which is absurd and ridiculous. They take them to detention centers. These people are initially processed, they're fingerprinted, they're photographed, they're entered into the DHS system. Their immigration status is reviewed. They look for prior orders of removal or criminal records that may influence what's going to happen next. So then at that point, ICE can release the person on bond, parole, or on their own recognizance. That's typically if they have family ties or no criminal record, or they can keep them detained if they think that this individual is a flight risk or some sort of a danger. They're then given a notice to appear. Think about this, is all due process. Notice to appear in an immigration court. That's where the charging, the document lists the violations, the alleged violations of immigration law. They have immigration court proceedings where they appear before an immigration judge. And then the judge makes a decision, removal or to grant relief in some way, which could take the shape of asylum or some sort of things. There's appeals options, and then ultimately deportation. That's the process. I got to go, though. SDG.